Even as a cradle Catholic, I've never had a particular devotion to the saints. I think I struggled when people put them up on this pedestal and made them so perfect and nearly godlike. In fact, the beginning of our passage from Sirach today begins by inviting us to sing the praises of our famous ancestors who have been given glory and ruled kingdoms and made a name for themselves. And indeed, even in the secular world, we uphold leaders and prophets and poets. But then Sirach takes a turn and talks about those who may not be remembered in that way. They too were people of compassion, Sirach says. These are the unnamed, uncanonized saints. The grandmother who taught you to pray. The third grade teacher who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. The neighbor who showed up with casseroles during the hard times. The friend who told you the truth when you needed to hear it. These are the ancestors who shaped us in ways we may not even realize. Many cultures around the world venerate their ancestors, understanding that we stand on the shoulders of those who shaped us. In the 16th century, the Jesuit missionary Matteo Ricci encountered ancestor veneration in China. This practice, which was controversial in the Christianity of his time, actually held something profoundly holy. The practice of honoring ancestors wasn't opposed to the Christian faith, but resonated with it. Our Christian tradition of saints participates in this universal human impulse. Yes, we have canonized saints, those officially recognized by the Church, but the communion of saints is far broader. It includes all the holy ones, named and unnamed, who have loved God and neighbor and passed on that love. These are the ones Sirach means when he says that their righteous deeds have not been forgotten and their wealth remains with their descendants. What they left us wasn't money or fame, it was a way of being in the world. Compassion, courage, faith, humor, resilience. Their bodies are buried in peace, but their name lives on generation after generation. Not necessarily in history books, but in the lives they touched. My grandmother's name won't appear in any martyrology, but I carry her forward every time I encounter someone whose advanced age deepens their sense of humor. She is, for me, one of the communion of saints. St. Ignatius of Loyola, while canonized, did not begin that way. He began by wondering what it would be like if he could be like St. Francis or St. Dominic. But he was like neither of them. Instead, God needed Ignatius as he was. As Bishop Barron writes, God makes saints the way he makes plants and animals and stars, exuberantly, effervescently, and with a preference for wild diversity. So I wonder, how am I called to be a saint? What am I passing on even as I live my life now? It's interesting that the kinds of people that Sirach mentions are the ones who had the gifts of counsel, wisdom, and knowledge. Those are the gifts of the Holy Spirit. So perhaps that's an invitation to lean into those gifts that the Holy Spirit has given me. Their descendants stand by the covenants, Sirach says. Who's watching me live out those gifts even when I don't realize it? What does it look like to stand by the covenants? To be someone who keeps faith with God and neighbor generation after generation? I think about the people in my life who embody this covenant faithfulness. They're the ones who show up week after week without fanfare. They're consistent in their prayer, even when it feels dry. They speak truthfully, but gently. They make room for others, especially those on the margins. There's a groundedness to them, a reliability, not because they're perfect, but because they've anchored themselves in something beyond themselves. When I encounter people like this, I notice a particular quality. They're free. free from the need to perform or impress, free to be generous because they trust in God's abundance. That's the covenant made visible, not in grand gestures, but in the daily choice to remain faithful, to keep returning to God, to pass on that relationship like a flame from candle to candle. What am I passing on in my own life? What kind of covenant keeper am I becoming? Sirach ends with bodies buried in peace and names living on. Not fame, not monuments, just the quiet legacy of compassion, generation after generation. That's the communion of saints, the famous and the forgotten, all held together in God's wild, effervescent love. And you belong to it.